Hello, everyone. The question for me to riff on about today is subconscious memory blocks. That's all that was mentioned in the comment. And so I'm going to have a couple of assumptions around this because a lot of the work that I do is around processing emotions that are stored in your body from events in your life, and for some of you, the traumas that you've experienced. And trauma is a very subjective experience. And one thing I often talk about, and I do have a podcast episode called Uncovering Suppressed Memories. That's a little bit of a catch title, but you can go and have a listen to it. And of course, this is going to be the most updated version because I usually just riff live in the moment. It's a catch title because a lot of people want to get into the deep, dark stuff, the stuff that they can't access, believing that that is what is going to liberate them from all their pain, all of the undesirable manifestations. But the thing is that often our body, our mind will forget things. It will lock memories away, even though we know something happened, people told us something happened. We can't access them because it's the body's protective mechanism. And yes, this stored memory, this stored emotion, can then result in different events in the life playing out in different shapes, ways, or forms. This is where I say it's the whole same shit, different story. And those memories are more accessible. So instead of trying to get to the thing that you can't access, as a result of this experience that you've had, the stored emotion, there are different lessons that are constantly playing out. So the undesirable manifestations I usually talk about are the physical aches and pains, musculoskeletal problems like hips, knees, elbows, migraines, period pain. It can also manifest in mental ways. I usually say anxiety, depression, fears and phobias. And then behaviorally, things like eating disorders, excessive exercise. It can be addiction, sex, drugs, alcohol, OCD. And then energetic stuff that I've been talking a little bit more about is just when life doesn't seem to be working out, can't now hold down a job, seem to be moving house all the time, toxic relationship after toxic relationship, or they always end in affairs, so on. So those are the undesirable manifestations, and often people sit there and go, why does this keep on happening? And then they reach this point where they're like, this is enough, I need to look deeper, let's look into emotions. But then, as I said, most people are like, oh my gosh, I have to access that memory that everyone tells me about, that my body suppressed, that I can't remember. And that's really hard work because your body's doing a really good job of protecting you from that. So the idea when you enter the world of emotional work is that you don't go for the deep, dark, hard stuff. Some people are cut out for that, but everyone's at a different place on their journey. I always recommend on processing the emotions on the more recent, the more accessible things, because they usually are still the same shit, different story playing out. And as your body starts to feel safe around processing emotions, that everything's okay, you start to shed the layers, and those suppressed subconscious memory blocks, in the way that I'm assuming this question's been asked, they start to be accessed. The forgotten memories, even the ones that you weren't focusing on, start to come up. So we've got to clean up the mess, shed away the layers, and then that's how you start to access suppressed memories. Not trying to dig into them from a place where the nervous system, your emotional regulation is out of whack. Because I often describe to my groups and to my clients is that if you're in survival mode, it's very difficult to do any of this emotional processing work because it's actually not a priority. Your survival is priority. So what I mean by survival, and especially this modern day, for some of you who may be watching, it may be that you can't pay your rent. It may be that you can't put food on the table, or it's a real struggle. That's like the modern day survival mode. And when you're in that mode, there's no hope of uncovering suppressed memories. So I do have a whole podcast on this that I did a little while back, many, many months ago, called Uncovering Suppressed Memories, if you want to dive into that a little bit more. But yeah, coming back to the question, subconscious memory blocks. Well, the other spin that I could take on this is that perhaps you're thinking that you've got these subconscious memory blocks that are holding you back from life and being able to take steps forwards. My core teaching, what I always come back to is like, when all else fails, speak the truth, process your emotions, and start that journey, and you will start to uncover the blocks. For me, the release process, which I teach people, the verbal dialogue process, that is where the most fascinating answers come up for my clients. They're not answers from how I think that they should manage a situation and what decision they should make. The answer is always in a release. If in doubt, process your emotions. This is where you're going to get your clarity. This is where you hear the same message over and over again. I'm always looking for themes. I'm always looking for patterns. And when we get that same thing happening over and over and over again, as I said, this is when some people go, right, that's enough. I need something to change. But at the same time, these lessons, these challenges are opportunities. They have some underlying message. It's not about the story in this case. It's what is the deeper message. Anyway, so subconscious memory blocks was just the sentence that was written there. I wanted to talk about uncovering suppressed memories. I've got that podcast episode, and you will hear me talking a lot about processing emotions. And I just want to give you a heads up that you've probably seen me do the 2 phases masterclass. That's pinned. I've also got the release flow teachings, which is something new. So if you're not quite ready for the release course, which will be running again live in January, the release flow teachings is high level overview on processing your emotions. You learn the process, you get to see it all laid out. I talk about the chakras, which is all about where do you store emotions in your body and how do you identify what emotions you're storing so that you can process them. And then the dosha work, which is all about how you're going to respond to this emotional work. So I'd love for you to check that out. If I haven't posted it, I'm going to make sure I post it and I pin it up to the top of the group or in the featured section. And if you've got any questions, let me know. So if you're new, you've never done anything with me, this is a new offer that just came out last week, the Release Flow Teachings. If you have done Release with me before, the full course, then you've already got access to this. And if you haven't dived into the course platform for a while, I would recommend that you do, because I'm continuing to build on the body of work that is on release, taking stuff away that I don't think is relevant and adding new things to it. So there is a lot of information on there. Okay, I will be back later on this week to answer the remainder of the questions on the November thread. Bye.